right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Commanders Film Room. You can find us every Wednesday night on YouTube on the Big Doug and Carmi Show. Please give us a like and subscribe and comment so you don't miss a show like today's episode with our co-host Mark Bullock today. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing pretty well. How about you?
I'm doing very well. Can't complain. It's a pretty exciting time in the NFL season right now. We're seeing the NFL schedule drop. Just for the record, our episode today is going to be on Kain Medrano. It's going to be very interesting looking at that prospect there. But before we even get there, Mark, I want to ask you a very serious question. How's your Spanish, by the way? Do you speak pretty fluent for the most part, or do you speak Spanish by any means?
No, I know very little Spanish. I did do Spanish for a year or two at school, and I have forgotten all of it since then.
Absolutely. I took maybe 3 or 4 years of high school Spanish. I even took it in college, but I don't remember anything. I can kind of pick up some words, here or there. But the reason why I'm asking, obviously the schedule came out. We have a game in Madrid against the Miami Dolphins. Throw it out to you again, Mark. Being over in Europe, that's actually a pretty cool experience, right? You actually have the team relatively close. I mean, there's definitely thousands of miles from where you're at. But are you going to make it to the game, or what are your thoughts on that?
I probably won't make it to the game, just because I don't gain anything from being there live and covering the game there. I have my kind of routine at home where I'm watching the game and then I get the film the next day and work through that and try to get a sort of set post schedule. So I probably won't make the game. It would be nice to go. The last time I went to a Commanders game was 2012, was RG3's home debut against the Bengals. And then the time before that, I was a kid, and it was, I think it was Brad Johnson was the quarterback, and he got benched for Jeff George, or he got injured and Jeff George came in for something.
1999. That's a long time ago.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I haven't been to too many, so it would be nice to go to one, but no, I probably won't be going to this one.
Yeah, I'm looking into it. It's a little bit expensive. I think round trip from Washington D.C. where I'm at is about $1,600, which isn't the end of the world. Me and my wife going out there, I just don't know how much the tickets are going to be. I heard the Real Madrid stadium is fantastic. It's gorgeous. I'm looking forward to it. So we'll see what happens there. One more question before we get into film study. In regard to the schedule, do you care about it by any means? Some people are really excited. Like, week 1 are playing the Giants. People are, week 18 are playing the Eagles. Do you care, or are you just kind of grinding, knocking it out, see how it goes? How does it affect you, if at all?
It doesn't. The main effect for me is primetime games.
Exactly.
Where I'm in Sweden at the moment is 6 hours ahead of you guys on the East Coast. So primetime games that start at 8 p.m. your time start at like 2 a.m. for me. So all those primetime games kill my sleeping pattern during the season. So that's pretty tough for me. I prefer it when they have no primetime games, and it's all 1 p.m. kickoff. So those are nice for me. But otherwise, know that I'm not going to games. I'm not worried about trying to get tickets and travel across the country to follow the team. So where they go and when they go is kind of irrelevant to me personally. So yeah, schedule release is never a huge deal for me. But I know it's a big deal for fans that travel and what have you.
Finally, do you have a ritual for a 2:00 game? That's kind of tough, Mark. You have a big cup of coffee? Do you have a old fashioned in your hand? What are you doing for a 2:00 game in the morning?
No, once we get to the season, I tend to try to move my sleeping pattern to live on US time.
Okay.
So it's kind of first couple weeks of the season are a little bit rough getting my body clock changed around, but once I get into the rhythm, it's kind of just being on US time. So it does mean that mornings are a bit tough, and I wake up in the afternoon, and then it gets dark real quick. So I'm living through the night pretty much, but you get used to it. I've been doing this for a few years now, so I'm used to it.
I will absolutely thank you for doing that. So without further ado, we're going to jump into our film study. So we're slowly working our way through the prospects. We talked about Josh Connolly at first, Trey Amos. We went into Jalen Lane recently, most recently. Now we're getting into Kain Medrano, which I think is a very interesting, kind of polarizing prospect. I think he was one that was kind of unexpected for us in DC. No one really had him on their mock draft boards, or really, I don't know if you did, but it just seemed like he was kind of an under-the-radar prospect. And I'm trying to figure out where he would fit. And Mark, where do you think he would fit as a player? He seems like he's a RAS score kind of guy, a height, weight, speed kind of guy. So I think he's an athlete, but where can the Washington deploy him this year?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the really interesting thing about him is that he is this very athletic profile. He's kind of undersized for a linebacker, and I guess the trend in the NFL has been for lighter, smaller, more athletic linebackers that are almost more traditionally safeties. I think I sent you a graphic earlier where I compared his RAS score with that of Jeremy Chin, who obviously was their strong safety last year and they let go. But if you can see there on the graphic, like it's pretty identical to what Jeremy Chin was coming out of college. Size wise is pretty close. Weight is almost identical. Their speed, their 20-yard split, their 10-yard splits, their vertical and broad jumps are pretty close. So you're looking at a very similar profile of athlete. Now, does that mean they're playing at safety? Not necessarily. Like he has a history with Ken Norton at UCLA, so he'll probably start in the linebacker room. But we'll see some of his strengths and weaknesses shortly with the film, and that to me, I think he might end up being more of a safety hybrid linebacker kind of guy. That kind of the role that Jeremy Chin played last year. Maybe less of the deep safety stuff, more box safety kind of thing. But yeah, I think we'll get into that role. But that's kind of for me. I think when I compared those two, I was like, okay, maybe that he's not necessarily going to be their kind of 3-down linebacker replacing Bobby Wagner or Frankie Louvu anytime. I think he's got a different kind of role.
Exactly. I think the way I envision him is more of a coverage linebacker, more of a special teamer during the first year. I'm just kind of curious of his fix. I know Washington really loves Jordan McGee, and that's like the heir apparent to Bobby Wagner, kind of building him up as a true Mike linebacker. I see Kain Medrano more as a will linebacker, more as a safety, more of a hybrid at like Buffalo nickel that we used to hear a little bit about back with Ron Rivera. I know it's kind of like a dirty word now, but it's kind of something that we're looking at. So I'm interested to see how this goes. I'm really interested in the film. So if you're ready, man, let's get into it.
Yep. Yeah, I'm ready to jump into that. So so the upside with Medrano is 100% his coverage ability. He's got real good coverage instincts, real good coverage ability, and potential to get even better. Like he's still relatively new to defense. Like he came into college as a wide receiver, as I'm sure everyone's heard by now, and he changed the defense. And that athletic profile means that he's got this coverage upside. So. And we'll see here, this is him playing in a zone coverage. He's dropping back into an underneath zone coverage here. And you can just see the instincts and the understanding of how to read a quarterback's eyes and let him follow them to the ball. So they're going to run an isolated route down here, and he's going to follow that, hit the quarterback's eyes and actually break it up. So we'll see him here. He's lined up like he's going to blitz. He's going to drop out into a zone coverage. You can see here he's got his eyes on the quarterback. He's following the quarterback's eyes out here to this receiver, and he gets all the way out and he gets up. He tips that pass, and you'll see the end zone angle. You can see it even better here. So again, he's lined up on the line of scrimmage like he's going to blitz, which is a nice ability to have a guy that is athletic enough to line up there and still be able to get back into his zone. And you can see he drops back. He eyes this tight end running up the seam, and he gets underneath that initially. But you can see his eyes now are fully on the quarterback's eyes, waiting for where that quarterback's looking. And you can see he's kind of looking straight down the field. He's thinking he's going to this tight end. And then his eyes, you can see the eyes and the shoulders shift outside. And that's when Medrano starts immediately working outside. You can see that throwing motion starts, and Medrano really breaks on that ball. And then he gets up, does a nice job getting a tip on that pass. Which makes it bobble and allows the other defender to fully break it up and make sure the receiver can't catch it. So
that's great athleticism right there. So just for the viewers right there, number 44 for Penn State is Tyler Warren. He's an NFL prospect. I believe went to the Colts, right? I think he was drafted in the first round. So, we saw Kain Medrano drop back in coverage, and I think he covered a lot of ground right there, Mark. I was pretty impressed by that.
Yeah, and that's the athletic upside. He's playing zone, but he's got the range still and the instincts to read the quarterback and understand where he's going with the ball through different reads. Obviously, being a receiver helps with that, or coming into college as a receiver would help with that. So it's good to see him be able to play zone. This is the same game against Penn State, and this time he's playing man coverage. So. They had two running backs on the field, and they motioned one out to the outside here, and Medrano followed him outside. And And this can be something where, like, in Washington, a Bobby Wagner might be sucked into this kind of situation, and you're thinking that's probably a mismatch. If you're talking like a Saquon Barkley on a Bobby Wagner or even a Frankie Louvu, that's a bit of a mismatch. But here we got Medrano out here, and he's just running a kind of delayed under, or just an in-breaking route. And he gets underneath Medrano, reads the route. He's focused on the receiver. He's not looking back at the quarterback yet, but he plays with inside leverage, reads the receiver breaking inside. As soon as that receiver makes his break, you can see he opens his hips. He's ready to drive on the route. His head turns inside, looks to locate the ball, and then he drives on the route and is able to get his hand in at the catch point, break that one up as well. And he gives a nice little celebration afterwards.
Pretty confident player.
Yeah. So that's in the same game. You've seen him play man coverage, break up a pass, play zone coverage, break up a pass. So that's kind of showing the upside as a coverage defender. He has good instincts in zone. He has the athleticism to hang in man. And this one is another good example of just that athletic ability and that coverage upside. So UCLA have got both linebackers in the A gap. They're showing that kind of Mike Zimmer defense where they've got both linebackers in the A gap threatening to blitz. And a lot of teams like to attack this kind of blitz look by sending that running back on a wheel route, knowing that one of these linebackers has got to try to match him. And for a lot of linebackers, this would be really hard route to match, going from on the line of scrimmage to trying to get over the top of this wheel route. But Medrano does it pretty effortlessly, especially as you'll see this receiver runs shallow and tries to create traffic. But Medrano does a really nice job. So I'll play it through here. You can see there's traffic from the tight end, there's traffic from the receiver, the running back's working outside immediately, the quarterback's immediately looking that way, and Medrano manages to work through that traffic and get on top of the route. And the quarterback immediately has to look away. He's like, okay, that route's not there. So that's just a great job. Again, a great athletic ability that not a lot of linebackers would be able to sort through that traffic and stay on top of that wheel route, especially from his starting position of on the line of scrimmage. But he made that look a lot easier than it actually was. And the quarterback has to go elsewhere.
The speed's apparent, Mark, from what I'm looking at right here. And just a quick question. I didn't really study UCLA this year. Where do they deploy him? Was he more of like a middle linebacker or will linebacker? Do they play a 3-4, 4-3? I'm not really familiar with it.
He did play in some different spots, and we'll see some different spots. The majority of the time, he was kind of a will linebacker, or sometimes a Sam. Depends how you want to call them. He wasn't the Mike linebacker very often, but he was typically the second linebacker. And sometimes he played some big nickel slot kind of stuff. Occasionally on like a goal line package where the offense has got extra offensive linemen and fullbacks and stuff like that in. He played safety in those packages where they loaded up the box. He would play safety occasionally, but for the most part, it was the kind of second linebacker role. So going back to it, we were talking about good zone coverage. We've seen the ability in man coverage, the athleticism in man coverage, and the other part of his coverage ability is his ball skills. And we talked about him being a good receiver, and you know, coming into college as a receiver, so he has ball skills, and that shows up frequently, the ability to break on the ball, and the instincts in zone coverage. Here you'll see they're running a dagger concept here, and the dagger concept is the inside receiver, in this case the tight end, is just going to run right up the seam, trying to grab this safety, take him out of the way, and vacate this hole underneath for this outside receiver to run his dig route into. Now Medrano is going to bite up initially on a play action fake, which isn't great. You don't want him to see him bite so heavily on a play action fake, but he has the athleticism to get back into his zone coverage and sink under this route, and then you see the ball skills, and then I'll play it through so you can see. Again, bites up quite heavily. You can see, compared to the other linebacker who takes maybe a step forward, he gets 2 or 3 steps forward, and is behind the 8 ball when that play action fake is over, but he's able to sink back into his zone and go up and intercept that pass, which wasn't the best pass, and then you see the receiver ability come after the catch as well. But we'll see the end zone angle here again. So he drives down on this play action fake, and it's not the best read from him, but again, he's got the athleticism to get back, and then he's reading the quarterback's eyes, and you can see that throw is going into where his zone should be. he does a nice job adjusting his body in the air, going to make a nice catch that was kind of high and behind him. He's not the receiver, so it wasn't high and behind him intentionally, but he went up and made a nice play. Again, showing the ball skills, the ability to track the ball, the body adjustment in the air, and then obviously the ability to catch the ball. We talk a lot about how defensive players struggle to catch the ball, and that's why they're playing defense. That's not the case for him. He's got good ball skills. Nice job catching that. And then again, after the catch, the kind of receiver profile, the receiver background goes and jumps the quarterback and takes it in for a touchdown.
He made a lot of ground up right there. I was kind of worried because the initial view, I don't know if you want to pull it up or if you saw what I saw. The initial view, I thought that he was almost like a liability. He bit up a little bit too much, which happens, but I think a really good quarterback could have dropped it right over his head. I feel like they would have made him pay in the NFL, but I guess, I don't know, let's take a look at it one more time. I guess he covered a lot of ground. Yeah.
He did cover a lot of ground. In an ideal world, he doesn't bite up so heavily. He's kind of similar depth to the other linebacker, and the quarterback wouldn't even consider that throw.
That's true.
So the quarterback would then look elsewhere. So I guess the upside of him biting so heavily and then having the ability to get back is that the quarterback thought he could make the throw and he went and made the interception. But if I just wind this back a little bit, you'll see he started on the 30, he got nearly up to the 25 and then sunk back to the 35. So he did cover quite a lot of ground, like
20 yards.
He gets up to nearly the 25, sinks back and makes the interception at about the 35, 36. So he did cover a lot of ground. But you're right. You ideally you don't want to see him bite up on that play action quite so heavily, and you want to see him and this is quite late as well. Like the pull, the read on the pull is late. You can see this tight end getting up the seam and not trying to block him. You could ideally, he is keying the puller, so that's what makes him feel like it is a run. But it's quite obvious that it's not a run quite early. And again, the tight end's the key there for him, that the tight end is releasing and running into a route, and the running back never really got close to the ball on the ball fake. And that's why this linebacker is able to jump back and get into his zone drop a lot quicker and a lot more efficiently than Medrano, who he also takes a little bit of a stumble and a slip as he's trying to get back. But credit to him, he does get back, gets into the throwing window and shows off the ball skills to go and make the play, and then the ability afterwards to turn it into not just an interception but a touchdown. So the coverage upside is there, and I think he's quite a unique player in that regard, because the profile, as we talked about with the RAS score with Jeremy Chin, is pretty unique, and it's more of a safety type body, playing linebacker, and if he can defend the run doing that, then great. We'll see shortly that I have my doubts there, but I think when we talked about earlier his role, I think you could see him as a guy that is kind of this safety hybrid linebacker, Buffalo nickel kind of guy, that can match up against tight ends, can match up against running backs, can even match up against some slot receivers, and give you a bigger body in the slot than like a Mike Sanderstill, for instance. If you're getting a team that likes to play a lot of 12 personnel with two tight ends, and they can match up bigger than you in the run game, and they can spread out those two tight ends and beat you passing game. Medrano seems like a kind of guy that I think you'd bring onto the field not necessarily instead of Mike Sanderstill. Maybe Sanderstill would kick outside, but instead of one of your smaller DBs, then you can bring Medrano and he can match up a little bit better, both in the run and in the pass. Still being athletic enough to match up in the passing game, but being a bigger body than Mike Sanderstill's 5'8", 180 or something like that. Whereas this Medrano's 6'2", nearly 6'3", and 220 pounds. So that's going to match up a lot better in the run game against the tight ends than Sanderstill. So
a couple follow-up questions to that. So I guess my first question, because you keep alluding to Jeremy Chin, were you high on Jeremy Chin? Did you find him as a good fit over here in Washington? Was he someone that kind of got away, in your opinion?
No, I don't think he necessarily got away. I think he had some value to them. I think he didn't necessarily get to see that value and play the role that they signed him for, because They early in the year they really struggled at corner, so they ended up having to adjust and play a lot more too high coverages rather than letting Chin play in the box. And we saw that run down the stretch where they finally got some stability at corner. He played a lot more in the box, and suddenly he started making a lot more plays and being on the stat sheet a lot more with more tackles and more run stops and stuff. I don't think we got to see him as a blitzer as much as they intended when they signed him. But again, that comes down to the struggling with the coverage on the back end. So I don't think we fully got to see what Jeremy Chin could have been in this defense, but that profile, that athletic profile that Chin has is something that Dan Quinn and Joe Witt have had a lot of success with in the past. You see the stable of guys they had in Dallas with that kind of safety linebacker hybrid type, that sort of 6'2", 6'3", 220-pound type of guy, really good athlete. And we saw that last year, not just with Jeremy Chin, but also like Tyler Owens, who made the team and was really good on special teams. I think there was one or two others, Ben Nickel, that they signed as an undrafted free agent that who fit that profile as well. Dominique Hampton, obviously, they drafted.
I was going to follow up on that. Like, I think maybe I'm oversimplifying it. I feel like Dom Hampton, Medrano, maybe even Percy Butler kind of lumped together, maybe direct competition. Do you kind of see like same position, same style? Percy Butler's a little bit more, I feel like he has more of a higher athletic profile, so we can potentially play deep, in my opinion. But in Dom Hampton, we didn't really see that often because of like, it was more during training camp. I was like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think in a sense you can group them up because they're the same kind of athletic profile. I think Hampton seems to be someone that they are trying to turn into that modern NFL linebacker type, the kind of the 220-pound, 230-pound light athletic run and hit linebacker, and he had some work to do in that regard. So we'll see. Obviously, this year, hopefully, we'll get more of a look at him. We didn't see him at all on the field last year, so we'll hopefully get more of a look at him this year. Butler, I think, is a little bit more of a traditional safety in that he could play a little bit deep. He could play man-to-man. I think he does better man-to-man coverage better than most people realize. And Medrano, I think, is kind of in between the two, where I think long-term his position might be more safety or that kind of hybrid linebacker safety profile that they have a good history of success with. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of where he fits in. And I think the upshot for him is that, as I say, Dan Quinn and Joe Witt have a pretty good track record with that kind of athletic profile and getting them into being productive players, whether it's as a linebacker or as a safety or big nickel, whatever you want to call it. They have a pretty good track record in that regard. So, but yeah, we'll get into some run defense and some of his issues, which the big red flag with him is tackling. But we'll start first with run defense, and run defense can be up and down for him. For the most part, he reads things pretty well, and you see him occasionally be really aggressive and shoot gaps. And that's when I think, okay, he can actually play in the box as a solid run defender. But there's just a few too many of plays like this one, and I'll start with this one, where he's just a little bit tentative and he lets a lineman come and climb up to him, and then rather than being aggressive and going up to the line of scrimmage and filling his gap and plugging it early and aggressively, you'll see in this one he's kind of a little bit tentative. He kind of sits off. He allows, this happens to be Commanders' new first-round pick, Josh Connolly Jr., climbing up to the second level to block him here. And it's a good job by Connolly, but Medrano makes it a little bit easier for him. So I'll run this one through. It's just a zone run to the left. And you can see he's just kind of tentative at the snap. He's not rushing up to fill his gap. He's kind of holding his spot, and Connolly's able to kind of freely release and climb up to him, get his hands on him. And at that point, it's really hard. Like, Connolly is 300 pounds, Medrano is 220 pounds. When a lineman has that kind of advantage, they're going to be able to pin you inside or kick you outside if you're not being aggressive and getting into the block and attacking it. You're playing off and tentative and allowing the guy to come and climb to you. So again, it's a nice job by Connolly. He does a really nice job pinning him inside, but Medrano kind of made it easy for him by being tentative and not filling his gap straight away, and not shooting, well, not necessarily shooting the gap, but not being aggressive in getting up to the line of scrimmage and filling it. And what that means is that the safety then has to come down, and the safety does have a run fit responsibility. So it's not like the safety doesn't have to come down anyway, but instead of Medrano kind of getting up and filling the gap early and allowing them to kind of squeeze and make up for the safety until he gets down, the running back gets kind of a clear run through the line of scrimmage and then gets a chance to make a play on the safety.
That's an ideal rep by Connolly, right? That's a dream. Like that's a perfect. You're turning the linebacker inside, pinning him inside, allowing for a wide open hole for the running back.
Exactly, and then the running back can go. That makes that safety's job really hard. The safety gets squared up and he loses his footing. Whereas the running back cuts back inside, and fortunately he just is able to trip up the running back, so it's not turned into a huge play. But you can see if he makes that safety miss, it's probably a touchdown. So that's the tentativeness that I don't like, but this is the aggressiveness that you do see sometimes. So he's right in the middle of the defense here. They run a little bit of a stunt with the defensive tackle going heavy inside on the center, and the guard tries to help out, and that allows Medrano to loop around. But you see he's really aggressive with it. He's much more attacking. He comes inside, and you can see he's filling that gap really quickly, and that's the kind of urgency that I'd like to see him for him a little bit more consistently, because when he plays with that urgency, he gets himself in good positions, like he does here. The problem is he misses the tackle here. So he gets into the backfield very early, and he's immediately making that running back make his cutback, but before he's even really secured the handoff. Like the quarterback's arm is still in at the mesh point there, and the running back's having to cut back. But the problem is Medrano kind of dives at his feet, and you'll see a consistent issue with him in that regard. But he misses the tackle, and you can see here's Medrano on the floor here. The running back is still on his feet with the ball pounding through where Medrano just was. So if you are aggressive and you get into those positions and you shoot the gap, it's great as long as you make the play. If you don't make the play, then suddenly that gap opens up behind you, and the running back's able to run through that, and it could have very easily cost him a touchdown. It didn't, because the rest of his teammates managed to rally to the ball and make the stop. But those are the kind of plays you want to see the guy finish. Go ahead.
I was going to say, as an observer, I see some promise there, right? I feel like aggressiveness, like pre-reads, pre-snap reads, being able to predict where the offense is going to go. That's a developmental thing. It's for any first-year player, especially when you have Bobby Wagner, Frankie Luvu. We all know Frankie Luvu plays with his hair on fire. He is super aggressive. So I feel like he'll get that aggressiveness underneath him. I guess I'm curious, because I know we talked pre-show about tackling. That was his issue in the pre-draft process as well. I hope that develops, because I don't like. Mark, do you think it's a form thing? Is it a strength thing? Like, what's leverage, and what are you predicting from what you've seen so far?
Yeah, so the next few clips we're going to see some of the tackling form and the issues with that. So I think it is more to a form thing. I don't think it's a willingness thing, or he's just not strong enough. I think it's a form thing more than anything else. Like, there are some other examples, but the consistent one that you see over and over, I'll get to. But this is another from that same Oregon game, and actually, again, it's Connolly pulling here to the other side of the line, and Medrano actually does a real nice job. He reads this play nicely, and he actually beats Connolly to the spot as Connolly pulls. But again, he kind of ends up diving at the running back's feet and can't make the play. So we'll run it through here. You see he's lined up again on the edge, so something a little bit different. But you see he beats Connolly to the spot. Like, Connolly's coming across, and he is an athletic tackle. We but he's struggling to catch up. No, you're good. He's struggling to catch up with Connolly. With Medrano, because Medrano reads the play so well, and he's aggressive into the backfield. So Connolly can't get there. And at this point, you're thinking he can either go make the tackle on the running back, or he can at least thump into Connolly and squeeze this hole and force the running back to try to cut this backside. But what he ends up doing is kind of just diving at the running back's feet, missing the tackle, and then the running back's able to break through, and suddenly there's a big lane for him, because that's where Medrano was meant to be, right? So that's kind of, I think I've got the end zone angle of that one. Yeah. So I don't think it has the best viewing angle, because it gets kind of blocked by this stuff. But you see him on the edge. The running back's going to take that handoff and try to follow Connolly on a tackle pull play. And Connolly comes across, And you can see he dips down to try to get past Connolly, but he doesn't get to the running back, and the running back's able to just he gets a hand on his ankle, but the running back's able to keep his balance, get back up, and someone else has to go and make the play. And that's a pretty consistent thing with Connolly. So you'll see some tackling form thing here. So you asked about is it a form thing, or is there something else? I think it's a form thing.
Okay.
And this play and the next one are the two that I think have show the best example of his tackling form. So this is back in that Penn State game, and they're just going to hand the ball off to the running back here, and he's actually going to come through the two linemen, kind of make a mistake, and neither of them go for him. So he's going to split them quite easily, and we'll run it through, and you'll see neither of them go for him. So he's able to he's anticipating one of them at least blocking him, and you can see he's ready to actually take on that block. But both of them kind of ignore him and go for other blocks. So he's able to come through nicely. And at this point, you're thinking he's filling that hole. The running back doesn't really have anywhere to go. At this point, he's kind of committed to try to burst through this lane, and Medrano's there to fill it. Now, Medrano does make this tackle, but he doesn't do it convincingly. And you'll see why. So at this point, the running back's coming through the hole. Medrano's there. And just now, as you see, Medrano stops his feet. You can see he drops his head. You can see the crown of his helmet. You can see his eyes are down. He can't see his target. And at this point, he's not even made contact with the running back. And what that means is that he can't see where the guy is. And it's a lot harder to tackle a guy when you can't see where he is. And so he ends up kind of, because he's gone low so early and he's dived down so early, he ends up, as we've kind of talked about, just going for the guy's ankles rather than hitting at the hip and wrapping up at the waist, right? So you can see he kind of just it's not too easy to see, but you can kind of see he just gets his hand on that right ankle of the running back. You can see the running back is still on his feet, and he nearly is able to break out of this, but you can see Medrano's head is still down. He's just got the ankle. He hasn't got any other part of the running back. And if the running back was able to break free, and you'll see quite a few reps where they are able to avoid that ankle tackle, and certainly in the NFL, running backs are pretty good at running through ankle tackles, then this becomes an issue. So again, he makes the play here. He does just enough. But if we come to this play here, you'll again see the example of the technique being poor. And he nearly loses the tackle on this one as well. So this is another inside zone play where the running back tries to cut it back, and Medrano again does a nice job getting himself in the right position. He falls back with the run, and he protects the edge. But then you'll see the real poor tackling technique, and this is a much clearer example of it. So you can see the running back here is cutting back towards where Medrano is, and he's containing this run on the backside. But you'll see as he approaches, again, you see what he does is he stops his feet. He's dropping his head, and like you want to try to get low to get your pads under a guy and make the tackle. But what you'll see here in the next frame, when I unpause it and repause it, you'll see his head drop, and you'll see his face mask drop, and the crown of the helmet will be facing the running back. He will be looking straight down at the ground, having no idea where the guy is, which again is not ideal when you're trying to tackle someone. Mm-hmm. You can see there goes the drop of the helmet. He hasn't reached out with his arms yet at all to try to get a hand on the running back. So at this point, he's now trying to tackle a guy that he can't see where he is. And the only things he can see are the feet when he's looking down at the ground, right? So he ends up going quite low again. His arms and his helmet are almost down on the ground at this point, and he's again trying to tackle an ankle. The running back manages to avoid that, stays on his feet, and nearly bounces this outside. And Medrano does okay to recover, but he's lucky that he's got teammates out here coming in to assist. And so the rest of the team kind of managed to make the play, and he does an okay job trying to rip the ball out at the end here and run away with it. But the runner was called down by contact at that point. But you can see the technique issue, right?
Absolutely. And just for the record, for those watching the show, that was Caleb Johnson from Iowa, who is now in the NFL. Was I think a second or third round pick. I forget now, but he definitely was a high end prospect, and he almost bounced out.
Yeah. And so the point I want to emphasize is that I don't think he's a bad run defender in terms of his reads. I think like I talked about with the Connolly play earlier, he can be a little bit tentative at times, especially when a lineman has the bubble on their side where they don't have a tackle or they don't have a defensive lineman over the top of them, so they have a clear lane to run up to him. He's a little bit tentative and lets those guys come up to him a little too often. But that's something you can pretty easily fix. So you can kind of coach him into fixing that. Generally speaking, he reads runs quite well. The issue is tackling. So this one here is another inside zone play. You've got a jet sweep coming across the formation, which is why he's kind of leaning that way already. Then the tight end's going to follow on a sift block and try to kick out this edge defender. And the running back's going to end up, this edge defender is actually going to stunt inside, and the running back's going to try to bounce his run to the edge around that stunt. And Medrano does a really nice job of reading all of this stuff going on, looping around to the edge to replace the defensive end stunting inside and putting himself in a great position to make the play. So the actual instincts of the run, you can see this is all coming inside. The tight end is sifting across to try to block this guy. That defender tries to crash down inside, and this gets kind of messy. So the running back you can see he's sticking his foot in the ground, ready to cut back. And Medrano here is reading this and can see this happening and falls back nicely. And he gets himself in a good position to go make the play. And he does actually make the play on this occasion. But we kind of see the same issues start to occur here. As he gets close, he kind of stops his feet. You can see the helmet's already starting to drop. He's not got contact with the running back yet. And again, he drops his head real low. And he gets his pad levels under the running back, but his head's so low he can't see where the guy is. The arms aren't wrapping up. It's just poor form. And he's lucky that he's got a teammate there to help him, because he could well have been run over if there was no other teammate there to help him. So the issue isn't reading runs. He's not the best linebacker. He's not Luke Kuechly and Bobby Wagner. He's not going to point out exactly where the run's coming before the play happens. But he can read and diagnose more often than not where the ball's going, and put himself, because of his athletic ability, he put himself in positions to go and make plays. The issue is just his tackling form, which some people will believe if you can't tackle in college, you can't tackle in the NFL. Others will believe no, that it's a form issue and that he's just not been taught it properly, or he was a receiver in high school, came into college as a receiver, so he still needs to learn form tackling. And for defense that is run by Dan Quinn and Joe Witt, and has a coach in Ken Norton on the staff, all guys that are huge on tackling. And when you talk about defense that wants to blitz and play a bunch of man coverage, you need to be able to tackle, because if you're playing man coverage and you miss a tackle, there's not three other zone defenders rallying to the ball to save you. It's 20 yards of space and you're giving up a big play. So for them to take a flyer on him makes me think they can fix that technique and improve him as a tackler. Not necessarily turn him into a tackling machine, but someone that can do a better job tackling than what we have seen so far.
I was just going to say that, Mark, exactly right. I feel like as you progress later in the draft, every player is going to have their warts. He's a 29th pick in the 6th round. So you kind of see the vision, right? You see the athleticism, you see the instincts, you see the ball of play you can develop, but you also see the areas of growth with him as well, right? Tackling technique and finishing the tackles and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think from what I'm gathering so far, I think it's a worthy investment in the 6th round. Give it a shot. It's a flyer, as you kind of alluded to.
For sure. So where I think in his first year in the NFL, I don't like they're not going to take Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvo off the field for him. So he's not going to. I don't think he's going to play linebacker in his first year. Where he could have an impact, as we've kind of talked about, is this kind of hybrid big nickel safety, buffalo nickel, if you want to call it that kind of role. And that's what he plays here. So you can see he's lined up over the slot receiver, and he's technically a linebacker in this defense, but he's basically a big slot at this point. And they're going to run a sweep play out here where they're going to pull both the left tackle and the center to the edge. They're going to try to pin the defense inside, and the slot receiver is going to try to block him. Now, this is where he has a bigger advantage, because he's a bigger body against the small slot receiver. He can kind of just work around that guy. And then at this point, you're a force player where once these guys are getting pinned down inside and they're pulling to the edge, his job isn't to necessarily go make the play. It's to reestablish the edge and force the run to cut back inside to the rest of the defense where the help is. Now, he does end up making this play, but we'll run this through and you'll see he can see this receiver coming to block him. He gets a quick peek into the backfield and see those guys pulling to the edge, and he immediately recognizes, okay, these guys are pulling to the edge. Our edge has been lost. I'm the one responsible for reestablishing that edge. So he works around the outside of that block, gets outside, and then is able to go, and he doesn't like take on these guys aggressively. He just gets himself in a position and uses athleticism to kind of dodge around them, which is fine. And again, he's reestablishing that edge. His job is to force this run back inside. Now the running back thinks he can keep going outside. He can't, and Medrano is there to help assist the play. But again, you can see right at the end, it's by the ankles. It's not wrapping up the waist, right? So I think, and this is the end angle of it. You don't really see much of him until right at the end. You can see him kind of coming in here, trying to bend around the corner and get in. But again, you can see he just grabs onto the ankles. You can kind of see it there. It's not the best view of it, but it's kind of, again, it's tackling a guy by the ankles. It's dropping the head. It's not form tackling that Dan Quinn would be preaching. So
to his credit, he put his nose in it, right? The ball was coming out. There's a lot of bodies at him. He attacked the running back, and he brought him to the ground. But I agree, it wasn't with authority. He just brought him to the ground.
Exactly. So, that would be where I think they could hide the tackling issues a little bit in that kind of big nickel role where he's more out over the slot. He's not as much in the run fits. Now, if you're playing a big nickel, you're typically playing against 12 personnel, so a tight end might come in and then you become essentially a linebacker in the run fit. But you're a little bit more protected. You're not the primary point of contact, if you will, the kind of like Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu would be, right? He'd be the third linebacker. So he'd be a little bit more protected in that kind of role. Now, the tackling issue is still a tackling issue, so he's not going to get on the field unless he can fix his tackling. But that would be the role where if his tackling shows some improvement and they want to get him on the field, they feel like he has such upside as a coverage player. And I've maybe not necessarily overhyped, but focused a little bit more on the tackling issues than the coverage upside. The coverage upside is legit, it's real, and it's very, very promising if you can fix the tackling issues, because he can cover a wide range of players with his athletic ability. So there is a legit upside to him, but that tackling is the first and foremost thing of what they preach on defense. If he can't tackle, you're never going to see the coverage upside. So
for sure. And then Mark, I guess the one positive spin of it is I feel like Adam Peters and Dan Quinn and Joe Witt, they kind of have a vision of how these players are going to fit, maybe filling in roles like Gino Lane, punt returner, Conley, everyone kind of has a certain puzzle piece that they're going with. Maybe Medrano, hey, he's going to be our coverage linebacker guy. Let's find a way to make it work. I mean, as I agree with you, if he has a liability in tackling, he's not going to make the field, but hopefully they can develop that.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, with the guys that they have on their staff that preach tackling, and it's not just hearsay. It's not just coach speak. They're like, yeah, we want to tackle. It's Dan Quinn, Joe Witt, and Ken Norton are all guys that are huge on tackling as a fundamental part of the defense. So, and it has to be, as I say, with their style of defense, that if they're wanting to be aggressive in man coverage and blitzing a lot, people need to make tackles in space. Otherwise, they're going to give up explosives. So for them to take a flyer on a guy that has tackling issues makes me think they have a plan to help fix those tackling issues, or at least make them more manageable. So, but the other side, some of the other stuff we'll get onto quickly. I talked about him kind of being a Jeremy Chin kind of player. Something that I think they wanted to do with Jeremy Chin more was blitz him and let him rush the passer a little bit more. And obviously we talked about it earlier where he couldn't do that because they had problems on the outside at corner, and so they had to play more two deep safety coverages, and so he was taken out of that role, and we didn't get to see him blitzing. We didn't really get to see Sammer still blitzing out the slot as well for the same reason. So we didn't see many DB blitzes, but I think Medrano is someone that has the potential to do that, and you'll see that here. He in I think this is Nebraska, Huskers. So he's lined up. He's a linebacker here, but you can see how this would be essentially a box safety as well, and it's just joining the rush as a blitz. And I'll just run it on. It's not like the most technical pass rush ever, but he creates pressure, like the ability to get there, take on the running back. He eventually does end up getting quarterback wrapped up, who has to force a quick throw. You can see him blitz here. You can see the quickness and the elusiveness and the athletic upside as a blitzer. Now, again, the technique's not there for him to take on a running back and drive the running back into him, as you might see Bobby Wagner do when he does this kind of blitz. But you can see the quarterback sees that rush and is instantly panicking. He's instantly ready to hop around and run around, and you can feel that pressure, like that's right in his face. So he's having to scramble, and suddenly you've got him off his spot. You've disrupted the read. He's not seeing it, what's happening over here. He's trying to scramble. Then he's feeling this lane is covered, and he tries to come back, and Medrano shows good motor. He keeps in the play. The running back tries to keep engaged with him, but he keeps in the play, and he circles back, and the quarterback thinks about scrambling out this way, but Medrano's got that cut off, so he ends up just trying to tuck it and go that way. And then suddenly Medrano's there, and at the last second, he tries to just throw this ball to this guy to avoid taking a sack, and nearly gets intercepted. But again, it's not the most technical, amazing pass rush, but it shows the potential as a blitzer. If you scheme him up, he has the speed, the athletic ability to create disruption in the backfield. This one here, he's coming off the edge against the right tackle back in that Oregon game, not against Connolly, but against the right tackle. And this time you get to see a little bit more of that elusiveness and the ability to be a rusher, just the ability to threaten speed outside and then dive inside with quickness. You'll see it better from the end zone angle, but I wanted to highlight him here first because he's off the camera on the end zone angle to start with. So you see him on the edge here, and he gets kind of inside and gets pressure, but again misses the tackle, which we can go on and on about. But
there's potential in a positive way. He's getting in there.
Exactly. So again, you see him here. He pressures up the field, and the tackle kind of feels that speed off the edge, so he gets a little bit more open to the sideline, and that leaves that hole inside. And you can see Medrano has the quickness to threaten that outside edge and then quickly dart back inside, get past that tackle before he can reopen his hips and readjust his feet to redirect back inside. And so he's right in on the quarterback and homing in on the quarterback. And the quarterback does a nice job, to be fair to him. He spins out of it. And obviously you'd like to see Medrano finish a little bit better there. But again, when you're blitzing a guy, the ultimate goal is to create pressure, force the quarterback off his spot, make sure that he's not just being able to stand there, wait forever and make a throw. And that's ultimately what he did there. So he does have some blitzing upside, and I think you could scheme him into a lot of nice blitz looks if he's kind of a safety, or as we talked about, that big nickel, buffalo nickel role. You can probably scheme him up in that way a little bit better than if you're playing at linebacker. And again, I don't think he's going to get on the field over Bobby Wagner or Frankie Luvu at linebacker.
Yeah, true.
So that would be the way to get him on the field early, is in that big nickel role. And then you can blitz him a little bit more and make him a threat off the edge or coming from deep where they're not expecting that kind of blitzer to come from. So that's just another option that, could potentially be in a future role, again, if he sorts out his tackling. So I think this is the final play that I've got on Medrano, and this one kind of sums up the upside and kind of the downside with him. This is kind of a read option, but kind of RPO kind of thing as well. They're going to bring this receiver across the field on what looks like a jet sweep, and he's just going to continue out to the flat. This receiver is going to come in and run a little spot route, and the quarterback seems to have the option to throw either one, or hand the ball off inside on kind of an RPO, but he also seems to have the option to keep the ball and just run it himself. So there's kind of three options for him there. He can hand it off, he can run it himself, or he can pass. Medrano is the linebacker, the weak side linebacker here. So we'll run this through. They'll bring the guy in motion. They'll get into the read option, and the quarterback decides to pull the ball. And Medrano does the right thing. He adjusts nicely and gets out to the edge to take away that quarterback keeping option. Now, I'm not sure why the quarterback doesn't just throw this to the flat, but he doesn't, but that's fine. But he makes this, Medrano kind of over pursues it because he sees the quarterback faking that throw, and he gets himself out of position after initially getting himself in a good position to cut off the quarterback run. And what he does is you can see, obviously, at this point, his hips are facing the sideline, whereas the quarterback's cutting back inside, and there's a big lane for him to work back inside. So he's kind of over pursued it after initially doing a good job getting himself in position. And that allows the quarterback to run by him and get out of the field. But he comes back. He doesn't give up. He shows good effort to get back. And as he has other defenders around him, he's not focused on trying to make the tackle. He focuses on trying to get the ball out. And what he does is he ends up ripping the ball out and keeping it himself and turning it into a forced fumble and a recovery, which he then shows some good return. So we'll see it from the end zone angle here. Here he is as the weak side linebacker. You get that motion. He reads that read option well, and he puts himself in a good position to take away that run to the edge. The quarterback makes that cut up the field, and you can see again his hips are outside. He's got himself back out of position. Fortunately, he's got teammates ready to help him out, and he's able to have the opportunity to circle back to go and make the play. And then you can see again, he knows he's got teammates around. He's hunting the ball there. He's not got his arms around the quarterback trying to bring him down. You can see he's got one arm in at the ball, and the other arm's also in at the ball, trying to claw it out and rip it out. And then you can see just at the end, he does manage to just rip that ball out, and he keeps it himself. It's not like the ball goes fumbling out and he picks it off the floor. He just steals the ball and then turns it into a fumble turnover that he recovered himself and picks up a decent recovery on. So
that was actually the second time he ripped it out this on this game study, on our film study. He ripped one out earlier in our game side. Yeah, he seems to be aggressive in regards to stripping the ball, which I appreciate.
Yeah, for sure. So sorry, the Krosky Merritt clip started playing immediately because I had them lined up, but I think we're at 52 minutes, so we'll probably save that for another one.
Yeah, I agree. So we could probably shelve that for now. We can kind of pivot a little bit. We have a couple questions actually in the chat, so I can kind of pull it up real quick. A couple comments. Give me 1 second to kind of get everything set up. Sorry. Mm-hmm. All right, let me see what we have. A comment over here. Uptown Dre, my brethrens, Kain will be a great special teamer this upcoming season. Could he play on special covering assignments on tight end? Also, salute. So what do you think about that, Mark?
Yeah, so I think he'll be a core special teamer, and obviously on special teams you do still have to tackle. But you can kind of I don't want to say you can get away with not being a good tackler, but if you're a really good punt return punt coverage guy, you can get down the field before the ball is caught and force a fair catch. And he's got that kind of athletic upside to do that. Again, you can kind of do the same thing, not to the same extent, but you can kind of do it in as a kick cover guy as well. And then obviously as a pump protector and kick blocker. And he probably wouldn't be in the kicking game stuff, but he probably would be in the punt protection unit and running down that kind of stuff, and the punt blocking unit probably trying to run down that stuff as well. So I think he can play most of the special teams, and again, he does still need to improve the tackling, but I think he can hide that a little bit, and the athletic ability will get him by a little bit there. I think if he makes the team, it's probably as a special teamer in year one. But that, as he suggests there, that kind of special assignments against certain tight ends or running backs or even bigger slot receivers, that if they're putting Mike Samuelsville back in the slot and suddenly they play, I don't know, like the Bucks and it's Mike Evans in the slot, well, they'd probably put Lattimore on him, but for example, a bigger body like that, and you don't like that matchup for Samuelsville, then maybe you can say, hey, this week we want to try Kain in there and use his athletic profile to kind of match up that way, and he has the ability to do that, and then if he's good enough in coverage, they won't throw the ball and he doesn't have to tackle. So I think there is a certain role for him, but I think obviously the big red flag is the tackling. I think they'll probably have a plan. They'll believe they can coach that up, because I don't think they would have drafted him otherwise. But obviously it remains to be seen whether they can coach that up or not.
He's interesting. He's one to monitor. I think he's the first draft pick from what we studied about and talked about so far where his role is undefined, right? We know Conley's going to be a starter probably week one, right? We know Trey Amos is going to get on the field very, very early, hopefully as an outside corner, but you never know how things turn out, right? Gina Lane, punt returner. Kain Medrano, I think, is the first time in the Commanders draft class we're starting to see a player is more of a raw product, and you kind of have some athletic upside. We can build him up there. My takeaway, we can kind of summarize on this, is there is coverage ability, there is athleticism, there's areas of growth with tackling, but there is a little spark of like blitzing as well. He might have that role there. And what I'm taking away from this as well, Mark, is maybe that linebacker role isn't defined. Maybe he is kind of more as a safety role. Kind of watch the reps go in training camp over there.
Yeah, that's how I would envision him. Obviously, they could have a different role for him in mind. Maybe they think he's just going to be a will linebacker, and once they coach him up a little bit, maybe that's how they feel. Personally, I think that tackling is too much of a red flag to trust him in that position early on in his career. And I think the coverage upside, as I say, in that kind of big nickel role, the flexibility that he has to cover such a variety of different body types, like the bigger tight ends, the bigger receivers, but also like smaller running backs or smaller slot receivers. I think he's got the athleticism to cover any of those kind of guys. And so that's a legitimate upside play there, that they've got a guy that could, if you can develop his big flaw, which is his tackling, he's someone that has the ability to cover multiple positions, and that in the modern NFL is a very valuable piece. So I think it's a worthwhile flyer, especially if they're willing to take the gamble on his tackling with the coaching staff that they have. Then I'm happy for them to take that gamble as well. So yeah, I think there is a legit future for him. It just all comes down to that tackling, which, as we see, I think it's a form issue. I think it is something that in theory is improvable. Whether he ever learns that technique and gets better, I don't know. I can't say. Only he can say, and we'll probably get a better idea of that come the preseason.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess my final thought is, he does offer an element that our other linebackers don't, right? Frankie Levy is more of a upfield, more disruptor, is more aggressive in regard to, just generating plays upfield. Bobby Wagner is a cerebral field general. And Kain Medrano is more of our coverage linebacker. And I think more established teams like the Eagles and Kansas City, they tend to, once their team starts to have a high base, they find specialists that they can kind of plug and play to kind of take their team to the next level. And maybe Kain Medrano is that guy. It might not be this year, might be next year. We'll keep an eye on that moving forward. So thank you for the film breakdown, Mark.
All good. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, guys, thank you for watching. 874 of you guys watch us live on X and YouTube. We greatly appreciate it. We greatly appreciate your support week to week. We're here every Wednesday at 5 o'clock, and Mark and I definitely love the fan input. Definitely give us some questions in the comments. We love that. I think next week we're going to lightly touch on Jacory Krosky Merritt. Mark, if you want to go that direction, and
yeah, well, I haven't planned out things, we'll see. We'll probably touch on him at least at some point. Yeah, we'll see what we come to.
Absolutely, yeah. I think what we like to do is just a shameless plug for Mark. Mark has Mark Bullock at Mark Bullock on X. You guys should definitely give him a follow. Follow his Substack. A lot of our content on video runs parallel to what he does in writing, so kind of a hand-in-hand match right there. So definitely, if you like this content, you like his content over there as well. I'm George Carmi. I'm at gcarmi21 on X. Definitely give me a follow as well. Follow us on Big Doug and Carmi Show on YouTube, and we'll see you guys next week. Take care. Peace.